first one?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Hockey season, isn't that?
Oh,
You know,
nice.
me being home was like an ice skate race. I mean, that was fun, right? Don't take my chair. Take my chair. No. My son. You can help it with the things too. Oh.
Yeah, he slowed me down.
Okay, Adam, this is yours, I'm assuming?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, by process of elimination, I was,
Take the short straw.
yeah, I picked the short straw on this one. Yeah, topic tonight, community surveys, discussion. Background, this came up as a topic early in the year, I believe sponsored by Councilmember Benson, and then was shifted on the work session agenda for tonight, so here we are. So I provided, did a little research, couldn't find a really good PowerPoint slide or simple instructional article from the league or anything like that to provide. So I put together some stuff. A lot of it is from the Association for Public Engagement, the International Association for Public Engagement. That's where kind of the spectrum and stuff like that comes from. But what I thought I'd talk about first before we get into surveys themselves is talk about public survey or conducting surveys, community surveys, point surveys, whatever sits within a spectrum of other public engagement and opportunities along this spectrum, which again the Association for Public Engagement talks about the spectrum from informing through empowering and all the different things that can go on in between there. So what I thought I would do first is talk about that spectrum and different tools that are out there, and then we'll move on from there into the survey itself. So public participation, and you'll see a theme again when we get to actual surveys. A couple key points that I wanted to make was, before we do any of these public engagement activities, no matter what they are, first thing we have to do is decide what we are trying to achieve. That has, at least in my experience here, sometimes been a downfall of some kind of public engagement, is we didn't have a real clear idea what it was we were trying to achieve. We thought, well, we want to do some public engagement. Well, why are we doing public engagement? What are we trying to get answered, or what are we trying to get out there to the public, as part of some bigger process? And then the second thing, second key point in any of this public spectrum stuff is managing public expectations. We've also kind of, and at least my time here, run afoul of that as well, is we put some things out there and we try to get maybe just some input from the public. If we don't adequately tell the public that, hey, we're just looking for input, sometimes we're putting out there the expectation that they are going to be decision makers, or that we're going to do some kind of referendum for whatever this kind of decision is. And there's a whole big difference between just trying to inform the public and completely empowering the public in a referendum type activity. And if you give people the idea that they're going to have a huge say in whatever this decision is, or that there's going to be some kind of vote or ballot initiative, and then they don't get that opportunity, that can be detrimental to whatever it is, the bigger picture of whatever you're trying to achieve. In my opinion, those are the two things. What are we trying to get done? And then making sure that we inform people of what it is, where this sits, and what we're actually really trying to achieve. Again, on this spectrum between inform and empower, some things to always talk about. The first arrow I have there is, the further you go to the right on this chart, the increased public participation you have. It also comes with increased effort. The further to the right you go, the more, whether that be political activity, whether that be staff activity, whether that be spending of resources, those things all increase. And the one thing that does decrease is you devolve, as you go further right, the decisions, the devolvement of the decision-making power. So the further to the right you go, the less the elected body has power to make the decision, and the more you're deferring that responsibility to somebody else. So some examples of each of these things, you can read their description, it's also in your read ahead. But just to give the examples on the bottom of the method. So when we're trying to inform people, we're doing things like press, social media releases, mailings, email blasts, updates on our website, sending out fact sheets, those kind of things. And you can see by the little arrow pictorial at the top, we're pushing information out. We're not really looking for feedback. We're just trying to make sure that the community is informed of whatever it is we're doing. Whether that be, just telling people that there is a Christmas tree lighting event on a certain date at a certain location, or putting out there when the next election is. So any of those kind of things. We often will get into the consult level. That's where we are trying to get some feedback. Things that you normally see that in the public sphere is public hearings. So last council meeting, we had an example of that, public hearing on truth and taxation. So we are soliciting and asking for public feedback and people come and they do that. We also have public comment on sometimes in person, like in a council meeting, you have the public comment section, but also sometimes we're putting things out there. I think the biggest example of a broader public comment that we might have done as a city was with the fire needs analysis. We sent out there and we allowed people to provide public comment online, in writing, by email, or in person at the public hearing we had associated with that. The other things you can do is a survey, which is the topic of tonight. So that's kind of where the survey sits. You're sending something out and you're asking for feedback, right? And then the other common things that we would see is open houses. We do a lot of those in varying degrees. A lot of times you'll see those in the parks sphere. If we're considering a new initiative or something in a park or a project, we'll have some open houses. The other place you see it a lot is in the city engineering sphere. So if we're doing a road reconstruction or something like that, where we're trying to get information out, we're also trying to solicit some information from that neighborhood on issues that might be around their street or whatever project we're doing. We have an open house and show them our plans and ask them for some input on that. As we get further off to the right, we have fewer of these examples, but in the involve, where we're trying to get the public to directly work with us more. The examples I can think of there are like our commissions, so our Parks Commission, our Planning Commission. We have appointed members of the community that are here to provide feedback from the community into the various processes we have. Obviously, planning stuff, park stuff. We've also had, for various activities, we've had like advisory committees or specialized committees that were pulled together for a specific purpose. The best example I can think of this is when we did our last community management plan. We had several different advisory committees that were put together specifically for that. Like there was an overarching one, there was a parks one, there was might have been a couple others, I can't remember exactly back then, but we had several of those. And you can also do deliberate polling. I don't have an example of when Orono has done that, but other communities sometimes will do that deliberate polling. As you get further over with collaborate and empower, then you're talking more about the examples I can think of as some kind of policy roundtable where we bring in a group, and it's not just about a comp plan or something like that. It's we're looking at changing a city policy or a major portion of the city code or something. And then finally, at the far end of the spectrum, the biggest example I can think of is when you involve a bunch of your power is in the form of a referendum. You don't see those as much in municipalities, but school boards do referendums all the time, and some other areas. I used to live in California and San Francisco. It seemed like referendums every election period. It was crazy. So that's kind of where all these things fit, and the purpose of showing you this is just to say that there are a whole bunch of different tools out there, and to do these kind of things, we just need to make sure we're picking the right ones. It doesn't just have to be one; it can be a combination thereof, depending on what we're trying to do. So, if we decide that the survey is the right way to go, then the one big bullet I wanted to throw up there on doing a survey is, before we even start down this process, we have to figure out what is it that we want to know from the community, and why do we want to know it before we exert these resources in separate and going through the survey. And obviously, the bigger the scope of the survey, the more resources and the more intensive the survey would be and the more intrusive it might be on the public as you try to get these answers. So before you even start down that process, it's you figure out why are we doing this. And then you can see the various steps, and they're probably pretty self-explanatory, but deciding what it is you want your survey to be about, then identifying your target audience. Is it the entire community? Is it the neighborhood? Is it a special interest group of a certain type? It depends on what it is you want to know and why. And then choosing a method of survey. I put some methods, common methods down in the bottom corner of the slide there. And as we decide the method, that's probably about the time we want to start deciding, is this something we want to do with in-house staff? When I say in-house, I'm thinking of a small online survey that's directed about something very pointed and what have you we can do with what we have. Or is this something broader, bigger, that we need to bring a consultant in? Particularly if we're choosing to do things like phone interviews or mail-in polls or any of these kind of things that are quite labor intensive to get done. Number 4 there is come up with specific questionnaires for your questions. This is the one that internal to the organization can take the most time, the most resources, and can be the most divisive. We have, particularly if you're on a big, you're putting out a big survey, a big broad survey, it's like for the comp plan. We have spent enormous amounts of time discussing and debating and deliberating on what questions to include, how to phrase them, what type of question is it? Is it a choice question? Is it an end question? How do we limit the response to the things we're interested in? All that kind of stuff. I'll give you some examples later, but one thing on the specific questions I was looking, there's an example, it was in your packet, that YSETA did a community-wide quality of life survey in 2022. And when they started, and they had a consultant, when they started, they had a budget X, I wrote it in, I can't remember. By the time they were done, it cost them $10,000 more. And when you look at why, we talked to the administrator, why that $10,000 extra from what they were originally budgeting, was because they spent a lot of time in number 4, so there was a lot of consultant time spent with the city council and with the staff going back and forth semantics of questions. So I put a star by it because that's very, very important and can be very, very time consuming. Then number 5, obviously the survey's got to go out, whatever form it's going to take, get the responses back. We have to analyze the data, and then we have to it says act on the result, but publish the data, so that public documents, and then we have to make sure that the public is informed of what it is we discovered, or what the prevailing thoughts were on the questions that we asking. Some quick do's and don'ts to kind of sum up some of the survey process stuff is, again, determining is the survey necessary? Is it the best way to get after whatever you want to do? Making sure you have a good set of goals and what your plan of action is. And then also establishing what response rate you're really looking for. Because your response rate can drive your survey methods. Sometimes when you just throw a survey out there, say online or it's on the website or whatever, you may get a very low response rate because you're forcing people to come to you to answer questions. You get a higher response rate if you're pushing out, and you get the higher response rates if you've got somebody cold calling people or standing at the grocery store with a clipboard as people come in and out. So you need to figure that out up front. I would say don't ask questions you already know the answers to, or questions you don't want the answers to. And then the final one I had on is don't underestimate the cost of conducting a survey. Both whether you're doing something in-house or doing something with a consultant, whether that's just staff time. I've been part of a number of surveys within the city where we said, oh, this is easy, it's only a 5-question survey, we'll knock it out pretty quick, and before you know it, a week of staff time is they shoot up. Again, a lot of times the number 4 they're trying to figure out what the questions really should be. Again, otherwise that example, resources just how much it's going to cost you to take that kind of survey out. I don't know if I have any questions on that, otherwise I've got some examples I can show you, or we're on a different discussion point, but that's all I had to say.
Yeah, you have some examples to share, sure.
Like,
Ray, what you want to say?
I was just gonna say, if we had a specific intent of why it was justify that, if there was a reason, or was it just in general wanting to survey? That was how it got brought up?
I think Councilmember Benson was the driver of this.
I brought it up when, after the beginning of this year, in large part because I think, having the surveys that are done at least regularly inform, this is where I look at it anyway, inform what we as a council think of in terms of what, our priorities are as a council, as representatives for the citizens of the city. So part of my reason for doing that is that it didn't appear to me, and Adam even indicated this here, that the last survey done was in 2017.
The last community-wide survey.
Can I interrupt quick? Adam's done a really great job, I can hear him well. I'm just having a hard time hearing you guys, I'm a little bit hard of hearing back here. Could you please speak up for me?
Well, you can come closer if you want to, I can make it.
Well, I got my computer plugged in, so it's just convenient for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, what I was saying is that I recommended this as a work session to get other people's ideas of what they think of as valuable in community survey. Because as a new council member, and somebody who has been a resident a lot longer than being a council member, I think it's really important to understand at any given time where your community lies in terms of what priorities they have as residents, how they feel the council is functioning, what we can be doing to improve anything. This is the type of information that informs decisions and policies about how we spend our money, priorities for parks, and a whole lot of other things. And it did occur to me also that on the continuum, it looks as if other municipalities have been doing surveys a little bit more recently than 2017, so I feel like we're a little bit behind in terms of that, which is why I wanted to bring it up. And there was also, this was very timely, because at our last session, we got these copies, I believe, of Minnesota City's publication in the November-December issue, has a whole article on community survey featuring a few different municipalities, how often we conduct them, and why they do so. And the theme here was kind of what I just mentioned, is that it's one of the best ways to understand how we as decision makers at community have on the community and understanding what the priorities are. And I also think it's beneficial to have input from other sources, independent sources, because that's how we know that we're doing a good job, rather than, it is time consuming. I understand that, Adam, figuring out questions, and I think this is really an area that experts are valuable in, because people do this for a living. I know I've looked into other municipalities as well, and there are companies out there that specialize in this, and to have that independent voice is really important for a lot of reasons, because they know what they're doing, and the results, are going to be able to be something that we can stand by as a city. So those were some of my reasons in bringing it up. It's simply to have a discussion with the council and understand kind of where we've come from and where we'd like to be going. And I know I'll speak for myself that it's very important for me to understand how the community feels about the council and the decisions coming out of it. So it's really to give as much of a understanding about where our community is as a whole as is possible.
I think it's good to look historically back, and the article that you brought up too, if you notice, and then when you brought them up, some of the best responses they got were like 7 or 8%. And so we got to decide, is 7 or 8% worth going through an entire survey, which is a very small number, versus saying if you're 30%. I don't think it's possible to be 30%. We should consult, you go door to door, your phone calls, you're going to spend an enormous amount of effort. So you got to decide, because I think it'd be great to have a survey. I would survey about the things that I would want to survey is all the great things that we have done. Do you want to have those continue? Or would you like to end them? Do you want to give them all the money the roads back? Make it zero, lower your tax rate. Things like that would identify what we have done, if they want to continue. But I think if we're going to do a survey, we got to decide, is 7%, when they say that's like the top number that they get from some of these communities when they get a good survey, is that really worth going through all this for a very small component, which was not kind of unlike when we did our fire survey, when we got 80 responses or 120. We got almost 9,000 people in the community. That's not a representative response, no matter what the numbers are from one side to the other. So it's challenging for sure, but I would definitely, I think it's, I wouldn't consider it one of the best ways, no. Because other people are spending enormous amount of money. I think being in the community, in small communities, being in the community, being out there, talking to people, getting things done, and engaging in the community, that's how you find out what you're doing, what you're doing is being done correctly. That's my perspective.
Hey, you mentioned earlier, the cost for Wayzata. Do we have an idea of what kind of cost they look?
Theirs was, just looking at, 27,000 was what theirs ended up costing. The one that they did in 2022. Which is they did a reasonably broad survey, I think they titled it a quality of life survey. They had a bunch of initiatives that they had, were doing in their community. This was their 2-year check-in or what have you with the community, on that.
Because they had a pretty major change in the parking lots, moving the boardwalk.
Absolutely.
Yeah, inherently humongous change in their community. The community is they want to become a destination, and that's what they're trying to create. And there's a lot of people on both sides of that destination argument about, so they're trying to see if it's worked well or not worked well after the fact, essentially.
And one of the examples we talked about in the 2017 survey, so here's the results page out of the comp plan. One of the things to note, well, one we did, back then when we did this, we did compare to our 2008, which was the previous version, previous update to the comp plan. But one of the things to highlight is when this survey went out, and I would say this survey was a staff-driven one, staff initiated, did not have a consultant. We used the same questions they used in 2008, but our response rate, out of a population of just under 9,000 was 194 people.
Was there a consultant in 2008?
I believe
Professional consultant? There was.
Where's Ron? Ron, was there a consultant in 08? You remember? You're the only one who's been here, maybe.
I don't, I think there was, but I'm not 100% sure.
Can I say something? There is a certain percentage where they consider a survey valid, like in direct mail. I think if you get a 5% response, that's good. You've done well. So I think I would reach out and find out what the average percentage is that you would get back.
I think that's two different issues. When you say good response rate, that's in terms of getting your money's worth. In terms of actually getting enough people to actually say what's the real opinion, I would disagree with.
Well, but I mean, it's
5%, 7%.
measuring, you're getting a response though,
I know, but that's how much you get for your money. It's a marketing money issue, not am I getting the correct answers, enough answers to really know what the community thinks answers.
Well,
all I'm saying is there is a line where good response in a survey, I don't think I haven't heard that yet.
That was actually referenced in this
Oh,
article.
is it? What
They
did
do
they
this
say?
cities, and this was the town of Warren, which is only 1,600 people about it. Their survey in this section, they were distributed via USPS and the local newspaper and Facebook, and the response rate was 9%, which was considered very good.
Yeah.
Which was considered good because they can't get above 9% unless they hire someone going door to door. It's a perspective. I wouldn't consider 9% to be a referendum on any answer to a question.
I think it would be interesting to see what other cities, whether it be Wayzata or I believe I'm interested in this other one's in Woodbury, and they do theirs every other year, I believe, in Woodbury. But what these other cities are gaining out of these surveys and what their response rate is like. Because here's what's clear to me, is that these are being done with regularity in many communities.
No, I'm not arguing that, isn't that? I said, I'm for surveys too.
Yeah.
I would have very specific questions that I would want my survey to say. whole bunch of money, 27, 35, 40,000, whatever it happens to be, to get a 90% response rate.
I guess I would look at it like this, I wouldn't want it to cost roads budgets or parks budgets where things that we're improving in the community, we're sending capital dollars into buying surveys, without any real goal.
Well,
I
there
don't
is,
think so.
yeah, I do see a goal in that with being informed on a semi-regular basis about what the community is desiring. I feel that we're flying blind in a way, because what we're seeing is maybe people showing up in public comment or at times communicating with individual council members. We're not seeing independent look at our community on a whole host of issues. I have looked at the 2008 survey that covered a wide range of questions. Here's what I would say about the questions. I know from knowing folks who do market research professionally for a living, that the way you phrase questions matters a great deal, and that will affect the outcome. So I think that's where that independent perspective or independent consultant really shines in that we can trust that the way questions are phrased is going to give us good data. Sometimes when we're in the business of writing questions from the perspective of the people who are implementing these programs, there's a bit of bias there. So I think that would be, it's the same reason that we would have independent audits of our finance department or independent audits of a hospital system or school. There's a reason that we do things independently, because I think that can affect the result.
Then you still gotta go back to, you gotta define what you think the monthly response rate is, that would be reasonable, so okay, this actually means something.
That'd be a
To
great
me,
question.
7% does not mean anything.
Well, here's what I say, I'm not an expert in
So that's
doing
the
community
case.
surveys, which is why I think it would be interesting to gather more data or to look at how the individuals who do this for a living are experts, what do they consider an appropriate response rate? That's just, to me, I think it's an open question.
And as far as other ways to do it, you've, like public hearings, public comment, open house, focus groups. Obviously, we could explore all of those options in this, but it's also being part of a small community and saying, hey, you both, you know.
There are many different ways to
Right.
gather input from the community, and it's figuring out the right,
So I
the right
think we all
one
think,
for the right purpose.
yeah, so, yeah, okay, got it.
And back to examples, I have some technical difficulty getting them to pull up, but if you wanted to look at it more, here's an example of, this is YSETA's, quality of life survey from 2022. They hired the most other company to do this. You get some nice service ratings and things like that. There's also some details on the actual quality of life survey findings and the PowerPoint that the consultant provided at the end of it. One of the things I wanted to show, we've also done, recently we used a consultant to do a survey when we did the Summit Beach master plan process. So we went out and did a survey, and that was an example of a survey that was pointed at a specific subject and a specific place. And so, that kind of survey you can do as well as part of a bigger project or a bigger effort. That one, that was part of that overall master plan was right around $10,000, part of which was a survey. Now, the consultant in this case just used normal, same kind of things we would use as staff. They used, survey monkey and things like that, and generated that. And there was a good deal of staff work on that one to prepare those questions and help push them out and collect responses. But we did get a nice executive summary out of the consultant when we were all done.
Adam, have you spoken to other administrators in gathering data for this presentation and what their thoughts are on surveying and how they've found these outside resources to be helpful or?
No, I talked a lot with Jeff, who's the city administrator in YSETA, about what they were trying to do and how they were doing this. In our last Lake Areas administrator meeting, I thought the idea of surveys and what different people are doing. And that's where, we talked about the general principles of first figuring out why are you doing the survey? What are you trying to get to? And figuring that out up front. And then I did have the other example I wanted to show, which is a good one for something that can be done in-house. And here's something that is a Chanhassen is doing. They use Flashvote, which is, you know, an online service. And their communications department puts together surveys every quarter or every couple months and on a particular topic. This is just an example of, they wanted some feedback on electric vehicle charging stations, so they fired a survey out to their community to get some responses. So things to note on something like this, you can see, I think there's 5 questions. You know, it's very concise. It's about a specific thing, asking for a specific set of information, and you know, there's all kinds of nowadays. There's all kinds of different ways you can display your results, and you know, word charts, and I'm traditional, so I like bar charts, but whatever. Some people like the big words. And so, you know, that's the other part of surveying. It doesn't necessarily have to be an all or nothing.
Well, we're in different areas of Orono that I think would be very, the questions would probably be very different. So I think we probably have to, you can break it out just in terms of, like, in the bar, is going to be very different than the country club maybe or up by the golf course.
So it all kind of comes back to, obviously, information is a good thing, but it's the, what are we trying to accomplish? And I think finding that first would help us know the avenue. right?
Well, and that's you know, from staff to council, that's the first thing that we wanted was what it is you're trying to get after, so that we can then look at the resources and put together the plan that best meets your needs. From some past bad experiences, not answering those questions up front can cause us you know, to go down the path that you know, ends up not providing what was intended.
I'd probably keep it along the KISS mentality, keep it simple as possible in house, and I think we need to break it down a little bit more by areas possibly, and the different areas and different questions that affect them differently.
And then it's providing context too, it's asking questions without having, you don't know how versed they are, and sometimes that's a great opportunity to also educate or inform or.
Well, that's one of the things I actually liked about, you know, this Chanhassen example. It was very focused. It was on a specific thing they were thinking about, which was electric vehicle charging. They were, you know, sitting there thinking about, well, hey, we're going to go after some grants for electric vehicle chargers. We're going to do some different things in our public spaces, and so boom, they fired this out. You know, the other thing about, you know, something like this is that setting expectation. This is just a simple survey going out to the communities. It's not meant to set an expectation that, oh, this is a vote on this. It's no, we want this is one set of data to figure out what it is we as a community are going to go do.
It's usually too, the
Supporting that.
people who are happy with everything that's going on, sometimes really don't pay attention to that stuff.
Correct.
Some people who have an extra grind might be the ones, so it's, as like I said, it's important to know they're not getting a vote, but they're giving just information, you know, context and pretext of how many, where they're coming from, what areas they're coming from, you need to be able to differentiate in terms of where we know where they're coming from as well.
And that is one of the challenges. Well, surveys, or any of these public engagement things, you know, in my experience, a lot of times, unless you're very, very careful, all you get are the people on the 2 ends of the spectrum, whatever the issue is. You get the people who are really passionate for whatever it is that might happen, and the people who are very passionate for it not to happen. And a lot of times you have to really work hard to get information on the vast majority of the people who maybe are sitting in the middle or uninformed about this issue.
Adam, you mentioned a minute ago some surveys that had not gone well. What was that in reference to?
I think one of this, one was I thought the survey that we did in 2017, for all the effort that went into that, hours and hours and hours of preparing questions and sending things out, and you know, email blasts and all this other kind of things, to get 194 responses out of our community was pretty disappointing.
How did you do that survey? Was it administered online or through postcard? It was online.
It was online. I can't remember all the different outreaches we did, but we did email blasts. We had a newsletter. I think we might have sent it out in a postcard. I can't remember, but you know, it was that kind of thing.
What was the response rate for Whitezettas?
I think if you dig into it, they had a specific number they were looking for. I think it was like 500. But they did that. Their survey was different than this. It was a very deliberative survey where this consultant went and called people
Right.
for like a 20-minute phone call type survey. So you know, they had a specific goal of a number up, and I'm not sure if it was 500, but I think that's what it was. And so, yeah, they achieved it. They keep calling until they get to the 500th person, but.
Adam, how many people are on the listserv list? So there's there
Depends.
are like 4,000,
Depends on,
households?
it depends on the list.
Oh, so that
You can sign up
seems,
for different things, yeah, and
Yeah,
like a whole spreadsheet.
Right. so then maybe that's not the, I mean, what is the best way to communicate it if you're gonna do
And
it?
that's what I read up on, I think it was a Harvard study, but it was asking advice versus opinions, and one was phrasing it that way, but saying that surveys can be detrimental. In fact, if you're looking to get more information for yourself to make a good vote, make good policy decisions, you're not really getting information besides a 1 to 5 rating on how you're doing. That's not helping you necessarily go forward. And they had kind of, I think, reverted back in the study about how it comes down to in person.
Mhm.
And that if you are a big city, that is one of your only ways to communicate, because you can't possibly talk to that many, but with a group of 5 council members and more things, like maybe it's more opportunities for coffee with the mayor, but it's coffee with the council every other or something to bring up ideas, that could be another.
Or just to be known, that's what I said in the beginning, we just be known in the community of all the sports you kids do, being at the school, all the different school things, being at the different events, like the holiday lighting, you're in with hundreds of people talking to you about everything that's going on. It's kind of where I think you get the real grassroots kind of knowledge of what's going on.
National night out.
You know, and I think the whole, I think the guys went there too, and I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think the wording of the questions and the questions, and we get really get bogged down on it. Because I think we are in an election year, I think there'll be some issues probably with that and what people want to see things worded, so.
The other
I don't
thing
want to
you
use
asked,
that
another
time.
issue that we had is, the other thing that comes to mind is, talking about picking your audience, and then wording those questions appropriately. We got there, and when I showed before about the Summit Beach, survey. But when we started down that path, the way that we had the questions was out for everybody. We noticed real quickly in our data, we were getting all kinds of input from people who weren't residents of Orono. And the group that had asked us to do that survey was specifically interested in what Orono residents were thinking. And so we had to redo the questionnaire, so that we could try to narrow that and see, okay, fine, get those other comments, but they really wanted to know what
Well, that's the politics of it, is the problem.
what the residents were saying, and then, and that was another example where we were a little bit too broad on our questions. I think we started getting a lot of calls and input that like this was gonna turn into a referendum type thing. It's like, this is just a survey, just a survey to gather information. One set of data for a broader effort. So.
Well, it's something to think about for sure, so we can revisit it probably early next year and see if we can. But I think it would be a survey, but I wouldn't be up for hiring a consultant or going to that in-house and I don't, overwhelm staff trying to figure out questions, so I'm very cognizant of the time that we're doing everything else for the citizens.
Yeah, I'm not saying that this needs to be a priority in the very near future, but my perspective on this is that there are certain times when it is important to have independent looks and evaluations of one's performance, and part of this is the information I'm interested in understanding more about is how are we meeting the expectations of our residents, what do they want to see locally in their community, what can we do to improve. So this is not specific, in my opinion, my interest in this is not specific to one particular project, but more like the one in 2008, where I do believe there was phone interviews with that one, and it was a bit deeper of a dive and an independent dive, because the reality is, if we're looking for anecdotal stories, any of us can talk to residents at community events and whatnot, but there's something to be said for independent evaluation, because that's, I think, when folks feel most comfortable being able to give input, whether it be positive or here's ways you can improve. That's sometimes difficult to do with the folks, who are the elected officials. So I'd like to see an independent survey, entertained at some point. That's my
And I don't have any problem with independent survey too, but again, it all comes to context, because to me, I would want to make sure people would be informed of all the things that have been done over the last 8 years, and do you want to continue that going forward? we can, and I would go down all the different things, very specifically, so when they're giving an opinion, it's an informed opinion on past performance and what was here and what is here now. That's what.
And that would be a good question, I would wonder how, is that they did hire, you said Letterman, or some, this is probably not reinventing the wheel, municipalities, because they've just been written about here, do this all the time, so how is that concern addressed in other councils, in other cities, by, folks who do this for a living?
But I think that is the one concern though too, is that, in the example of Wayzata, is another good example is, you look at their budget, they spend an additional $10,000 doing exactly this. Because the firm you hire is not, yes, there are basic questions that people use in these kind of things, but then those get handed over to you all to vet and make sure you're happy with before it goes out as a community survey. So, there can be a great deal of time getting 5 people to agree on what those questions are before that consultant gets the green light to execute the survey.
And on top of figuring out what they're gonna execute.
Right, yeah. They can help us through the process, but at the end of the day, it's this body who has to say yes to whatever those questions are and the method that we're going to use. And, ultimately answer that question up front is, why are we doing this?
I think it's a good conversation to have.
It's a very good one. Thank you, Alan.
So let's revisit this in the spring, and maybe we get in January, first or second meeting, we can kind of reevaluate looking at the work sessions again and see if there's something we can fit in again to have one more discussion again.
We're referring to January to spring. I was getting really excited at this.
Because I keep thinking, it's like, December 11th, we're already talking about January, so we don't have any more meetings. All right?
We're good?
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
Is that a video that they produced? Why is that?
Go to mine.
Is that?
Or you just-
I'll look at the link. I didn't get a chance to look at them all. Right.
Like Plymouth does one every 3 years.
They have a system now that they can.
I can't. Some of the bigger,
Maybe it's
that could be one of the things.
I don't look at men's shoes.
Why? Because I only work for December, we're coming back. Now I don't have my first year. Christmas story. Yeah.